That's a nice touch for the new edition.
It's Bitcoin Dead or Alive. All right, we're going to get started here in just a minute, folks. It's okay. Welcome. Jonathan, welcome. All right. Let's kick things off here, guys. It's a little good, the bad, the ugly, or what was that, Gunsmoke, Rick?
More like for a few Bitcoin more.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Right. So the name of tonight's show is Dead or Alive. Let's go ahead and get started here, guys. All right. It is 6:02, and I just kicked off the live streaming. Welcome everybody online, and welcome everybody that we've got here. It's Tuesday night, 6 p.m., 6:02 local time here in Bali. And we're just about to kick things off for 2015. We've had a little bit of a break. Lots has happened in the interim, so we've got lots to cover in the next hour. This is Bitcoin filter number 34. So this is the 34th time we've gotten together to do this. Hopefully there'll be many, many more. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to cover some stuff on the local scene. There's some stuff happening locally I think you'll be interested to hear about. We've got the Inside Bitcoins conference coming up. We'll talk a little bit about that. That's in Singapore, beginning, what, the day after tomorrow? Thursday. And as far as the news goes, we're going to talk about some crazy happenings in the global currency markets. It's been just lots of weirdness, and we'll talk a little bit about that and what's going on. Yeah, it's we haven't seen the end of this story. So stay tuned for that. We've also got some of the great stories that you guys have posted in Bitcoins in Bali. So let's kick things off and take a look. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, if you'll just bear with me for a moment. There we go. Present to everyone. Now everyone should be able to see our screen here. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I see a few new faces. The way we run this meeting is it's an ongoing meeting. It's happening all the time, just not all the time in person. While we're not together in person, we hang out here at the Bitcoins in Bali Facebook group. You can go to facebook.com/groups/Bitcoin in Bali. And we post stories here all week long, and then we get together in person to talk about it. There's lots of great contributions here. We discuss it in the comments, and then when we get together in person, we have a chance to talk face-to-face, maybe debate some of the things, talk about things in more detail, and it's a lot of fun that way. It works pretty well. One thing you might notice is up here, we've got Bitcoins in Bali, and I've put a hashtag in front of this Bitcoins in Bali so that we can also have the discussion on Twitter. We're going to test this out and see how this works. If you have any questions, if you're dialing in remotely or if you're watching remotely and you have any questions at all, just do so on Twitter and use the hashtag Bitcoins in Bali. And we'll see if we can't integrate some of the people who are participating remotely. And also, we can still have, this can be part of the conversation. We can have the conversation on Twitter as well. Well, we'll just see how that goes. It's a bit of an experiment, but we're trying to make this Bitcoins in Bali a little bit of a thing and trying to continue the conversation on Twitter. So let's see how that goes. It's a little bit of an addition to what we were already doing last year. There's a few other things that I want to kind of make you aware of, at least in terms of new things this year. If you take a look at the coinmap.org, you can see this is a pretty wide area. Bali's down here, but you can see this is India and Thailand. Singapore is right around here, and this is Southeast Asia. And What you don't see here are any red dots, which means for this entire wide area, there are no places where there are 100 or more merchants accepting Bitcoin, right? And so, you know, part of what I want us to do when we get together is brainstorm on how to essentially give us a red dot in Southeast Asia. I think that should be part of our goal this year. If you zoom in on Bali, you can see we're doing pretty well, but after a year's worth of work, only about 17 merchants in Ubud, only about 17 merchants down in Kuta. So I think, well, I'm thinking we can get to 100 merchants if we try. So I want to track a few more metrics when we get together every week, one of which is total merchants accepting Bitcoin. The other thing that I'm going to track every week when we get together, there's a few other metrics. We've got the cumulative Bitcoin income volume. This is for Ubud itself. You can see we had our first merchant, I think it was maybe Clear Cafe back in July of last year. And over the course of that time, we've spent about 18 Bitcoins, right? So 18 Bitcoins have been spent in Ubud. I'm sure it's more than that. I don't know every merchant and every Bitcoin address in Ubud, but you can see that it's a nice trend. You can see more and more Bitcoins are being spent over time. I don't know, 18 Bitcoins, what is that at current prices? Let's see, equal 18 times, I think we're at about 260. Is that right? 260 right now? So about $4,600 at the present price. I mean, that's not very much money. You can't really say that's an economy yet, but I just want to, I don't know, I think it'd be interesting to start watching what's happening in terms of the Bitcoin economy here in Ubud. So each week we're going to start tracking that. The other metrics that we've got here are cumulative Bitcoin transaction volume. Again, this is for the same subset of merchants that where we know the Bitcoin address. It's not any specific merchants, but just a random handful. And so you can see that we've had over 70, 75 total transactions over the course of that time. So still small numbers, but still, you know, on 75 different occasions, somebody has purchased something in Ubud using Bitcoin. So I don't know, it's a starting point. Last but not least, each week we're going to track the weekly Bitcoin transaction volume. So this is the last few weeks. Actually, this goes all the way back to let's see, July of last year. But you can see that on a week-by-week basis, we've only got, I think we peaked at 8 transactions in 1 week. So what I'm challenging you guys to do is to find the merchants in Ubud, spend a little bit of your Bitcoin, and let's see if we can't push some of these numbers north and then track what's happening over time. Hopefully we'll be able to find, we'll be able to push up the number of transactions, the total spend, and also the total transaction count. And I think that will be something that'll be fun to watch over time. The other thing that I'm asking for your help in is to recruit new merchants to accept Bitcoin. So, you know, it's a bit of a difficult conversation, or can be, because not all merchants know what Bitcoin is. But I'm hoping that over the course of the next year, we can start to educate merchants and get them involved, show them how to accept Bitcoin, and make it easy for them. So one of the things that I've done is I've created a very simple Bitcoin point of sale system that's running at this address, and I'll put this in the show notes. But what you can do is, if you talk to a merchant and they're able to accept Bitcoin as payment, you can simply give them this web address, and they can pass in their Bitcoin address as a parameter in the URL, right? So essentially, when you do that, you got this Bitcoin point of sale pops up, and you can put in an amount like so, and hit pay. It will watch for that transaction to hit the blockchain, and I'll show you how this works in just a second. So basically, it's waiting for that payment to hit the blockchain. And I'm going to go ahead and pay this little tiny invoice myself, just to show you what you see when this works. So when the payment hits the blockchain, you see a little success statement. And so right away, as long as the merchant has a Bitcoin address, you can pass that into the URL, and whiz bang boom, they're all of a sudden they're accepting Bitcoin. Now this is an open source project. It runs all inside of one file. And I encourage you to go ahead and download the file, take a look at the source code. I'll show you here. It's very simple, one-page source code, not very long. Even if you're not technical, you can kind of see what's going on there. And go ahead and repurpose it for your own uses. Take a look at it, download it, improve it. You can see they've already done this at Ubud. You can see they're passing in the currency US dollars. So like if you want to buy a Ubud membership, you can type in 50 in there, and it'll do the same type of thing. It does a real-time lookup of the price, shows them a QR code with the price embedded, and then it acknowledges the payment. We're also using that at local restaurant, theonion.com. And like I said, it's all open source. You don't need me. You don't need any permission. You can download this and get started yourself.
Cool.
So
You need to be a member in SSL.
Yes, that's what I want to
well, it'll be a group effort, but yeah, good suggestion.
If it's not SSL, I can sit here and I
Right, man in the middle.
Payments come from my address.
Yes.
Very easy.
Man in the middle. Yep. Okay, so anyway, it's a start, and I encourage you to take a look, download it, use it, improve it, share it with the group. It's an open source effort.
And if anybody wants to come to a store that already takes Bitcoin, I have 4 cards here for the ladies.
Yes,
So jewelry,
Tabra.
and clothes.
This is Tabra's voice you're hearing. She was the very first merchant in Ubud to accept Bitcoin at her jewelry shop. And well, jewelry is not tops on the list for the demographic of people who have Bitcoin, but Tabra is cutting edge, and I hope you visit her shop and maybe buy a piece of jewelry or two.
Could you pass it down to the
Sure.
ladies?
All right.
Anyone else who wants to come by?
I have a wife, she's fond of such.
Okay, I have 4 cards that are on Hanuman Street, just before you get to Devasita, and my name is Tabra, and the name of the shop is Tabra. And we will definitely accept your Bitcoin, and we have a
Here, I'll show you. I'll show you on CoinMap here. Did you know you're on CoinMap?
no.
If you zoom in here, see that little piece of jewelry there? There's Tabra, right there on Hanuman Street. You can find her. Go buy some jewelry.
What's that one up north and west?
Up here, I think it's Gaia, Villa Gaia. Okay, so that is that. What else do we have? Oh, last but not least in local news, there's a contingent of us going to the Inside Bitcoins conference beginning January 29th, day after tomorrow. If you're going to be in Singapore, look us up, come find us. It's going to be a really good event. Also, I think there might be a free ticket floating around. So anybody who needs to do a last-minute visa run, why not hit Inside Bitcoins for free or at a heavy discount? If you're interested in that free ticket, come see me afterward.
And if you're there anyway, the exhibition is free. And
yes.
keynotes are free.
Right. Just so you know, our own Oscar Dharmawan will be speaking at the event. And also Rick Shreves will be on one of the panels. Is that right? All right. So got a good representation there. I hope if you're in Singapore or interested in going, we'll hope we'll see you there. There's our own Oscar Dharmawan, also in local news. He was interviewed recently by the Digital Currency Council. I'll put that link in the show notes. All right, that's it for local news. Let's take a look at the price. Right now, at this very moment, Bitcoin is trading at $252.80. You can see over the last 24 hours, we've come down from about 300 down to 252. So there's lots and lots of movement on price lately. But as I'll get into later, there's lots and lots of price movement with lots and lots of currencies these days. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Bitcoin is all over the place as well. So hang on to your hats. I think we're going to see more and more of this. Currently, I'm actually buying Bitcoin because it's so low. I think as long as it doesn't have a technical failure, then I'm bullish. So anyway, 252.68 is where we are right now. Coinometrics, we usually look at the total market cap as well, but Coinometrics, the site was down earlier when I tried to pull it up, so I'll have to save that for next time. And in terms of Indonesian rupiah, we're just over 3,200,000 Indonesian rupiah for one Bitcoin on the bitcoin.co.id website. So we haven't convened a meeting for about a month, a little over a month. Our last meeting was December 13th of last year, and we had a little Christmas break. And lots has been going on with the price since then. I joked in the title, it was Bitcoin Dead or Alive, and I joked in the description that the reason the price fell is because we stopped having our Bitcoin filter meetings. And you can see now that we're starting to have the meetings again, you can see there's a definite positive correlation to, well, I think as soon as I announced that we were having the meetings again, the price recovered. So you're welcome. A couple interesting things on this graph. You see this flat line and no trading? We're looking at the Bitstamp feed here, and Bitstamp went down, right? They were hacked. They had about $5 million worth of Bitcoin stolen. And it's really interesting. I mean, we've seen this in the past with companies in the Bitcoin space. You know, there's no 1-800-Bitcoin to call when you have problems, so you have to rely on yourself and the community. And the folks at Bitstamp, to their credit, handled the whole thing quite well. I think it's a model of how to handle such things. You don't want to ever get hacked, but if you do, I think doing it, handling it the way they did was the right way to go. Essentially, they made all of their customers whole. They figured out what the problem was. They stored the majority of their Bitcoins offline in cold storage or with multi-signature technology, so they didn't lose as much as they could have, and they were back online shortly thereafter. So that's that flat line that you see there. I also want to show you that we hit a low of 152.4. That was the low point back in mid-January or so. And since then, we've been back over 300. So, you know, 100% move in just a few weeks. So it's really crazy days for Bitcoin. I hope nobody's getting motion sickness from all of this volatility. But I think, well, if you put it in perspective, if you can see the big picture, I don't think it's that big a deal.
Well, kudos to Roberto. He called the bottom.
Oh, did he?
He did.
How, like,
150. You know?
and did he do that in writing in the group somewhere? Oh, okay.
It's on Facebook on the thread.
Awesome. All right, that's cool. Does he have some insider knowledge that we don't know about? Should we be calling him up more often?
Get out of it.
All right, so that's Bitcoin as a currency, and like I said, the price has been all over the place. But have you guys been paying attention to what's been going on with other currencies around the world? It's quite interesting indeed. Let's take a look at the next tab here. This is the ruble-euro spread for the last year. So you can see over the course of the last year, it has gone from 45 rubles to the euro to, I think this is, what was this? 85 rubles to the euro. So I could have graphed this against the dollar too, and it's a similar graph, but we're going to look at another currency versus the euro in a second. So I wanted to keep it consistent. But that's almost 100% right there as well. It's not within 2 weeks. It's over the course of a year. But the ruble is a much bigger currency, to say the least, than Bitcoin, and for it to fluctuate that much against other currencies around the world, it's significant. I don't know when the last time that happened. We can look a little bit further out, but you can see there's definitely something anomalous going on here. Let's look over 5 years. I mean, I don't know how you guys read this, but that looks like something unusual is going on. And there's no doubt about it that there are currency wars going on right now. That you read about Russia and the United States, going toe-to-toe over political issues in Syria, but you can bet your bottom dollar that there's also currency wars that these political entities, the United States and Russia, are playing games with one another with regard to currency and pushing each other around, messing with the prices of commodities like oil, etc. And well, we're just the little guys. We just got to make sure we don't get squashed by these things. So, but we just talked about Bitcoin being volatile, but we're in good company. We got the ruble with us here. Anyone have any idea what the next currency I'm going to look at is?
Franc.
That's right, the Swiss franc. Here's a 2-year chart for the Swiss franc, and it's a little bit hard to see. Anybody know what happened here? Yes. On this date, whatever this was, the Swiss franc was worth 0.83 euros, and then on the next day, it was worth over 1. And usually you don't see that with global currencies. This is an interesting story because, and we talked about this news item before we took the break, there was a referendum in Switzerland for them to repatriate their gold and keep a 20% reserve ratio for their currency in gold locally. The Swiss have a radical democracy, and if you can get enough signatures on a petition, you can put it to a national vote. And that's what happened with this gold question that they had, and the gold question didn't pass. They didn't end up having to repatriate their gold or maintain a 20% reserve ratio. And one of the reasons that it failed is because the Swiss central bank said that if they were to keep that kind of ratio, they would have tremendous trouble keeping the peg they have with the euro. And you can see, over the course of the last 2 years, let's look at 5 years, you can see, for a good 10 years or 5, 6, 7 years, they've been maintaining a peg against the euro. That's what's going on this relatively flat line here. And then you can see in one day, we had that 20% jump. The central bank in Switzerland really has no more credibility because they made the choice to stop pegging against the euro, and obviously it wasn't the problem with gold that was keeping them from releasing the peg, because they ended up releasing the peg anyway. These days, the way I see it, central banks are in the business of controlling public perception, and they say things in order to, in the best interest of their economy within their political boundaries. And once they lose that ability, that credibility, in this case it was with regard to the peg against the euro, but central banks are constantly talking about what they're going to do with interest rates, what they're going to do with money supply. And now the Swiss, if you're someone who watches the Swiss franc, you really can't believe anything that the Swiss bank says about their policy or their upcoming policy. Incidentally, when this happened, I think even a little kid could tell you there's something wrong here. It's a total anomaly within the last huge chunk of time. Several basically Forex companies went out of business based on this change. Hit people like a truck. If you were on the wrong side of that equation, you lost a ton of money.
So maybe Bitcoin is the one that's stable, and because we have to transfer our money into fiat, that's the problem. Maybe Bitcoin's the only.
Well, Bitcoin is extremely stable on another metric, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Certainly over time, Bitcoin's volatility goes down and down and down. So someday, I don't think we'll ever see this kind of spike or change in the Bitcoin price versus other currencies, unless something goes wrong with the currency. But I don't think it'll be Bitcoin that happens to, but we'll see.
Pretty good advert for Bitcoin.
It is. Well, let's.
Because wasn't the thing that preceded that the euro come out and said they were going to start running printing presses, and then the Swiss just couldn't run the risk.
Well, that's the next story I was going to highlight.
Sorry.
So we don't know each other, do we? We didn't agree on this? Okay. No, you make a very good point, and I'm glad that you did. Obviously, you're paying attention, and the reason that I have this tab up next is because this is related. Like I said, central banks are constantly talking to the market, trying to telegraph what they're going to do so that economies can react in a positive way for the policymakers. And a while back, Europe and the Eurozone have had all kinds of problems in the last few years. And this guy, anybody know who this is? Mario Draghi. He's head of the ECB. He said, "We will do whatever it takes." Whatever it takes. This is the quote that is haunting him right now. But actually, he's putting his money where his mouth is because the Eurozone has introduced $1.1 trillion in new money that they're going to print. I'm sorry, trillion euro, which is actually more than $1 trillion. 60 billion euro per month they will print in order to stimulate the Eurozone economy. So, I don't know if it's obvious to everybody how this skews people's perception about what the real prices of things are. But if you've got a total money supply of, say, $1 million, when you double that money supply, everything in the economy is worth half as much eventually. But those prices trickle out into the economy in an uneven and unfair way. Basically, the first people that have a crack at this money that gets printed get to spend that money at the pre-inflation rate. This inflation will work its way through the European economy, and it'll probably be some hairdresser or some small shop owner that doesn't realize that they need to change their prices by some commensurate amount to the increase in the money supply. And so it's really the little guy that gets squashed. Most little shop owners don't know what this means, right? And well, I don't know. I guess really smart economists could agree or disagree on whether or not this is a good idea. But I see it as problematic, and I see it as really harming the little guy.
Gary, I'm sorry. Could you scroll down just a little bit? I want to see the rest of that sentence that starts that third paragraph. The Frankfurt-based bank will use electronically created money to buy bonds.
Of Eurozone governments. Right.
Electronically created money? Does that sound like something else that we deal with in here?
Well, you're right. 97, a rule of thumb, only about 3% of the money we use actually circulates as coins and paper, and 97% is digital money. So we already live in a digital world. The difference is that they're just going to type this in. Essentially, they're just going to type this into a ledger and increase the money supply. And of course, that leads to my favorite graph. Well, where did it go? Here it is. My favorite graph. So this is what has happened with the U.S. money supply, and it has increased 4 times since the global financial crisis in 2008. So talk about volatility. That's the other metric that I was going to mention is these currencies are extremely volatile in terms of supply, right? And then you compare it to Bitcoin. Total Bitcoins in circulation follows a very predictable path, a very unvolatile path. You know, money is just a way to measure real world things, right? We're trying to count real world things when we use money. And if you change the supply, then the integrity of your accounting mechanism is shot. And so I think it's interesting to take a look at Bitcoin and think about the volatility in terms of supply. Bitcoin is not volatile in terms of supply. This is one of the stories that was posted by the one of the people in our group. I think it was Peter in South Africa posted this one. This is a tongue-in-cheek op-ed. USD drops 12% against Bitcoin. Is the dollar dying? So you know, back in the fall of 2011, I read an article titled "The Rise and Fall of Bitcoin," and they were declaring Bitcoin dead at that time. And I think earlier this month, I posted a link to BitcoinObituaries.com, and it has a running, scrolling enumeration of all the headlines that declare Bitcoin dead, right? So this is like a kind of a funny piece in the other direction, you know. Oh, the dollar drops 12% against Bitcoin. Is the dollar dying? It's like a reversal of all of that bombastic bad news you hear about Bitcoin volatility. And I don't know, obviously it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it is interesting. It's an interesting read, and it really does, it makes you wonder, you know, how long the dollar can go on doing this, or how long central banks around the world can continue to do this with their money before people lose faith. You know, at the beginning of the hour, we talked about how we're trying to build a Bitcoin economy here in Ubud. I mean, it's a bit of an experiment, but you know, essentially we're trying to get people to get used to using a new system, a fair system, a different system of money that's works in a more fair way. You know, moving people to the new paradigm is, well, changes are coming. Bitcoin is an answer to those problems. You know, other people might have different ideas about how to hedge their bets, maybe buy some gold, or maybe move their assets into real assets like fine art or real estate. Jewelry is also another. Yeah, yeah. You know, nobody knows what's going to happen, but things are changing seismically. I mean, all you have to do is look at these graphs. You know, the ruble losing half of its value in the course of a year. You know, 20% jumps in big currencies like the Swiss franc. Changes are coming. You know, if you just look at the way that the U.S. has been printing money over the last 5 years, you know, anybody can tell that we're living in a new world now. This is what the world looked like while I was growing up. You know, nice steady progression of money supply, and then bam, you know, something bad happened here, and we really don't know what the end result is going to be. So yeah, you know, getting people here in Ubud in our small way, just trying to get them to use a different kind of money. You know, the more people that choose alternatives, the more comfortable they'll be when the big changes happen. So anyway, when the big changes come, I just hope that it's not too painful for everyone. All right. All right, one more kind of interesting article that was posted up on the Bitcoins in Bali group was a bit of a technical article, but I wanted to talk about it with you guys because there's, you know, you can get into all kinds of technical difficulties or technicalities, I should say, around Bitcoin, and I pay attention to more or less of them as I need to. And one of those technical items is the Bitcoin difficulty, right? Now, the way Bitcoin works is there are tens of thousands of computers all over the world participating in the Bitcoin network. They've all got their computers on, connected to the internet, running the Bitcoin software, and some of them are participating in such a way that they create new Bitcoins, right? Every 10 minutes or so, some new Bitcoins, new baby Bitcoins are born into the world, and it's a reward for those people who are participating, who are applying their computing power to the Bitcoin network. And the smart folks at MIT are posing this question, how, the more computers that participate in the network, the more difficult the Bitcoin problem is to solve, the problem that if they solve it, they get the new Bitcoins. So essentially, the way Bitcoin works is that difficulty is recalculated every 2 weeks or so, right? So every 2 weeks or so, all of the Bitcoin miners that have been participating in the mining process, the difficulty level goes up or down based on how many miners are participating. And the question they ask here is, are we self-correcting that difficulty quickly enough, right? And what happens is, what the danger is every 2 weeks we're adjusting the difficulty, right? But miners participate or don't participate based on the price of Bitcoin, right? Because if you are donating your computing capacity to the network, and you're expecting to, at some point in time, win the block reward, which at this point is 25 Bitcoins, 25 new Bitcoins every 10 minutes. If the price drops precipitously, then your profits drop precipitously. It's in all likelihood your electricity and your computers and everything else, all of your fixed costs don't drop by the same amount that the price drops. And so the question is, in a 2-week period, could there be enough computers that stop participating so that we never are able to achieve that difficulty level again, so it can reset? So there's a bit of a trap door there where if the difficulty sets very, very high, and then we have a precipitous price drop and miners stop participating, then we'll never get to that point where we recalculate the difficulty of the problem that people solve.
So that nobody can solve the block for a very long time again.
Right, right. And I've actually experienced this in the last 2-week period. I did some Bitcoin transactions, and some of them took about a half an hour to clear, which means that the difficulty hit a certain level, and then a bunch of miners said, I'm out of here because the price has dropped. It no longer makes sense for me to mine Bitcoins, so I'm going to turn my computer off. Meanwhile, the difficulty is still very, very high with fewer miners participating, which means that although it's supposed to happen every 10 minutes, in my case, I saw times over a half an hour. Comments?
Even if 90% of the miners go away, so we will have 10 times 10 minutes, which is 100 minutes. So 90.99% of the miners should turn off their computers so that we have 1 week or 2 weeks. So I don't know. Maybe I have to read it.
Well, the interesting thing that happens is, of course, the next difficulty is calculated based on the participation from the previous block. So presumably, if you jumped back in right after the difficulty reset, you could make a lot based on the lower difficulty. I'm sure the Bitcoin miners are very sophisticated and have thought through this quite a bit. And I'll show you. It's kind of interesting to look at the history of Bitcoin difficulty. And this is for the last year. And you can see it's been climbing. Each 2-week period, it gets more and more difficult to solve the Bitcoin problem. That's because there's more and more miners participating, more and more machines, maybe some new ASICs technology comes on board. I think if you look at the all-time, you can see it. It's actually even more interesting. Like, look at how it was basically this easy for the majority of the time, and in the last year, you can see how many miners have gotten involved in mining Bitcoin. But it was always rising. But you can see there's something different happening here. let's go back. You can see the difficulty at some certain points in time has dropped in some of the most recent 2-week periods. It has dropped here, but Bitcoin survives. So it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. This is all new. Bitcoin is a bit of an experiment. We don't know if 2 weeks is the right amount of time to calculate new difficulty. I know that there are other coins, other Bitcoin experiments that change this aspect of the algorithm and do like an ongoing difficulty calculation. But in the case of Bitcoin, we've got a 2-week period where, if the price drops off and Bitcoin miners stop participating, it can really affect how the payments are cleared. And so far so good. Nothing has broken, but it's something to be aware of and something to watch, especially given that for the first time in well over a year, we're starting to see the adjustment go down instead of always up, up, up and away. Any questions? Is that clear? So it's a little bit wonky. What's that?
Is that the first time it's decreased?
It may have increased or decreased way back in the day. I don't know. Certainly in the last good chunk of time, it's always gone up. I'll bet somewhere in here, I'll bet it has gone up and down. During the early days when they were just experimenting, but within the last year, this is the first time we've seen difficulty come down, and that's because over the course of this time, the price has gone from over $1,000 per Bitcoin to we hit the low of 150. So you can understand that if you've spent tens of thousands of dollars on mining hardware and your electricity bill is coming due, you might have no choice but to turn off your machines and let them sit. And that's they're either going and mining other cryptocurrencies, or they're just turning their machines off altogether. All right.
If that stopped and it went down and it just stopped and nobody was able to do it again, would that stop the whole Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin is a technology, and as long as there's no technical failure, I think Bitcoin will survive. Mm-hmm. But if we were to enter that scenario that I described, where 90% of the miners dropped out within a 2-week period, and we were never able to reset the difficulty, or maybe it was a year away before we could reset the difficulty instead of 2 weeks, then that would be harmful. That would be harmful to Bitcoin, because that would mean that when I send Bitcoins to you, I couldn't be certain that that we haven't had a double spend for the clearance time, which could be, in my case, it was a half an hour, which was a little bit disconcerting. But if it took like 2 days to clear, then people might start second guessing the utility of Bitcoin as a payment mechanism. Yeah.
Because that would be, if it took 2 days, if I had like 1 Bitcoin, I could spend it here, then spend it there.
You could attempt to double spend, and I would have to, before I gave you my product, like let's say you bought a product from me for Bitcoin, I'm supposed to wait for 6 confirmations, more or less. And, if it takes a half an hour for each confirmation to happen, then instead of waiting 1 hour, I'm waiting like half a day to get those 6 confirmations. And then maybe I'm like, well, it's just not worth it. Bitcoin's, takes too long to clear or something.
Has anyone thought about putting miners on solar power so there's not the energy cost in mining?
Well, everybody talks about, like, one of the things that people complain about with Bitcoin are the electricity costs, right? They're like, look at all that wasted electricity. They're just doing proof of work and they're not solving any real problems. And, all those machines are wasting all that electricity. But you can bet that every Bitcoin miner is looking for the cheapest way to get their power, right? So whatever computing power it takes to secure the Bitcoin network, you can be sure that those miners are incented to find the most efficient delivery mechanism for that power that they have. So the biggest mining operations are found in places where there's geothermal energy or hydroelectric or possibly solar. They're looking for the cheapest energy they can find. Maybe their employer, they can just plug it in at work. That's pretty cheap. I know that was going on when back in the early days, people were, you'd open up the janitor's closet and someone would have like a big mining rig set up in there over the weekend. Anyway, yeah, that's there probably are people using solar power to run their mining equipment, no doubt about it. All right, that's the last story that I have highlighted. Are there any other stories that people have that they wanted to kind of talk about?
You mentioned the Coinbase exchange yesterday.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yes, the news of the day. Let me pull that up. Let's see if we can find it. Huh. I'm surprised nobody posted this on the Bitcoins in Bali site, but the very first U.S. Bitcoin exchange, regulated exchange, has opened for business. It's actually quite interesting when you think about it that this is the first exchange to open in a regulated way. So, Mt. Gox has come and gone. There's basically liquid markets all over the world. Our own Bitcoin.co.id has been in business here for going on 1 year. And it took this long for a business to open, to clear all the regulatory hurdles to become a Bitcoin exchange in the States. But I think earlier today, it opened. And there's another one waiting in the wings. The Winklevoss twins have one, I think, all teed up and ready to go. So
It's only available for certain states, like 26.
yes, yes.
24 states, I think it is. And trading is free until 30th of March.
Yeah. Is that 60 days? For 60 days? Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Sometimes we talk about regulatory arbitrage. We use that term. Basically, what it means is people go and set up companies where they have the fewest regulatory hurdles to clear, so that they can get started more quickly. This is actually a pretty interesting measure of the barriers to entry there are in the U.S. Financial markets, that it takes well over a year for a competing company in the United States to open up for business when there are exchanges in other countries all around the world. So,
Does anybody know how you can deposit there, only with the bank transfer?
I don't know. I have a Coinbase account, but I'm just using it for a merchant system. I'm not awesome.
yeah, I've got a Coinbase account too, and I'll probably check this out and see how it works. And these guys are definitely playing by the rules. After a quick look at the website, I can see that any funds you keep there are FDIC insured. With FDIC, for those of you who aren't American, it's basically a guarantee of your money, a federal guarantee of the money you have on deposit with them. One of the idiosyncrasies of the United States is there is a regulatory environment in each of the 50 states. And as Jonathan mentioned, they've only been able to do the paperwork for around 20 or so. So it's quite onerous to, lots of paperwork to do. But these guys have done it to their credit. And if anyone, I'm going to take a look at it myself, but if anyone takes a look at it too, I'd be interested to hear people's thoughts on this. Maybe in the next few weeks, we'll have a better picture of how well this is working. And also if the new Winklevoss exchange comes online.
There are rumors that the ETF is going to come live in 2 weeks. It's only rumors.
The Winklevoss ETF?
Yeah.
Right.
For a long time. But in my opinion, I think I mentioned this 2 months ago when the price was falling down. In my opinion, it was a clear manipulation that somebody pushed the price all the way down in expectation of such an event. And I already lost the hope because BitLicense just got lost. Nobody talks about it anymore and so on. And then I said maybe it was a mistake all over the all the time, but now in the last 2 weeks, in the weekends, we don't see anybody selling this amount of bitcoins. And then all of a sudden, 5 days ago, they announced the New York Stock Exchange is backing them, which I think is very old news. You know, they didn't get the backing 5 days ago, and now they open a Bitcoin exchange already running. Yesterday night it was running. There was 1,000 Bitcoins volume, which I don't know where it came from because they just opened. You enter the Coinbase and you see 1,000 volume with the active limit orders all the way. So I think these big capitals were behind a huge price slump in the last year, and now it's a very bullish. Yesterday I cleared all my euros and dollars from all my exchange accounts. I bought bitcoins with everything I hit, and now I'm selling money. So okay, I'm losing now probably 10% on the average, but I don't care because I think they will never. This is going to be, in my opinion, it's only a projection. I think this will become the biggest exchange by volume, which means that all the other exchanges are going to follow this price. When they start following this price, nobody, it is regulated. They're not going to allow anybody to manipulate the price because they don't have, they don't want the price to be volatile. So because now in Bitstamp, somebody goes, anonymous person, and puts 30,000 bitcoins for sale, and nobody knows who he is and why he does this on a Saturday afternoon. Because it's not regulated, nobody can go and say, who is this guy? And Bitstamp doesn't say, I don't know why. And if this cannot happen in this exchange. So I think the volatility is going to be taken care of. And by Bitcoins.
You see that as a bullish sign, and you're putting your money where your mouth is.
I put a lot of money in my mouth. So during the last years, and I lost, now I'm losing a lot of money after this. But,
well, you know what's interesting?
This news just put everything in place for me personally, because I was lost somehow in the big picture. But yesterday was this news came yesterday.
Yes.
They announced it 12 hours before that. It was Coinbase Lunar, and then you see to the moon, you know, and it was a very nice 4 o'clock. It was like 10 o'clock here in Bali. They did it very well with a lot of show, and so yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if you're correct about the volume, because you know, like you said, they opened up and all of a sudden they had 1,000 bitcoins of volume. Who are these people that are trading? Maybe they had some sort of
one of the trading was institutional.
Right.
Vehicle.
But of course, you have to take their word for it, right? I mean, they can publish anything they want. One of the site that I've got leak, which on the API divisions being traded around the world, right? And you know, the USD uses others, and this CNY, which is China, uses the BTC China API. But they've come under lots of scrutiny. Well, not scrutiny, but lots of speculation on whether these figures from CNY are correct or not, because basically they're just publishing figures on their API, and it's very opaque. You don't know exactly what real bitcoins are trading hands, because it's done on a fractional reserve basis within the exchange. But you can see that the volume is, anytime you turn on this website, you can see that the volume is just dwarfed. The US volume is just dwarfed by China. So it'll be interesting to see if your projection comes true.
I think this version doesn't incorporate Coinbase Exchange yet.
Well, no, probably not. It's only been open for less than 24 hours. I don't imagine that it's there yet. But and also it's middle of the night in the US, so it's going to be obviously going to be a little bit more here. But you can see just in the time that I've had it open, we've had 200 bitcoins exchanged on the Chinese exchange and 44 on the US exchange. I hope you're right that we see similar volume here than we do in China, but who knows? Time will tell. It's something we can keep our eye on. Yeah.
But
good points all. Definitely good points.
there was one when the price was dropping, there was very good discussion. This metric, days destroyed. The volumes were very high when the price dropped, and the days destroyed metric was virtually unchanged. So it was very. So where did all this volume come from? You know, if the volume increases so much, there should be some transaction in the blockchain, you know, for new deposits to the exchanges and so on, and this metric should rise.
Right. So for those of you who don't know this metric that he's talking about, Bitcoin days destroyed, is because we've got the blockchain and we can see all Bitcoins that trade hands. We can see if you're selling a Bitcoin that has never traded hands before, or a Bitcoin that's been trading back and forth, you know, every day or every hour or every second. And that metric that measures how old the Bitcoins are, how many old Bitcoins are being traded, is called Bitcoin's days destroyed, right? It measures I think it averages all the Bitcoins that are being sold. It averages how old they are, or when the last time they were traded is.
Yeah, also averages the motion in the blockchain itself, and normally when you get high volumes, it should also rise. But then we get 3 or 4 times bigger volumes on the exchanges, and this metric just stays constant, which means that exactly what we were talking about. This is fractional reserve banking, what the Chinese exchanges do. So they may put as many Bitcoins to the sale as they want without any. Nobody knows if these Bitcoins are real or they're just fractional reserve. So it was a very concerning happening. But
well, I will just add that, and Circle is like this as well. Coinbase does not let you keep your own keys. It is doing off-chain accounting for all the Bitcoins that it's trading. And if you have Bitcoins at Coinbase and you don't have the keys for those Bitcoins, then you don't really have those Bitcoins. Just throwing that out there. It's kind of interesting that, you know, we've had Bitcoin for about 5 years now, and there's a constant pendulum swinging back and forth between people taking personal responsibility or using centralized services, and then going back and taking personal responsibility and then using centralized services. We've been burned in the past with the likes of Mt. Gox and others, and that's what drives us to centralization. Well, the first time somebody's Coinbase account gets frozen, maybe they'll choose to go the other direction. But anyway, yes. Thank you for bringing up the fact that Coinbase opened up their exchange. It's big news, and I didn't have it on the tab, so that's cool. Are there any other items to talk about? All right. Well, I'll just wrap things up by saying we keep the conversation going on Facebook, facebook.com. Oh, wait, did I just close that Facebook tab? Sorry about that. The Facebook group, we keep things going there. We're experimenting with having the conversation on Twitter as well, using the hashtag Bitcoins in Bali. If anything that we've talked about in today's session is interesting, why not tweet about it and use the hashtag here? We can use Twitter to talk about it. Looks like we've had a few. Anyway, get out there and spend your Bitcoins in Ubud. Go to bitislands.com or CoinMap, find out where you can spend Bitcoins. Go buy some jewelry from Tabra. Support the local Bitcoin economy. Buy something with Bitcoin, and then replace your Bitcoins. Get them circulating in the economy, and then replace what you've got. Okay, that's all I've got. We'll convene for now. We'll see you next Tuesday, same time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You'll be back from Singapore?
What's that?
You'll be back from Singapore next week?
I will, yeah.
Okay.
Who else is going? Do that.
Deborah is going. You're going? Oh, awesome. What's your name? Blair. Oh, Blair. Okay. Yeah. Very cool.
Thanks very much for helping me.
You're welcome, Tabra.
If I make any more money, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I want to swing by and make sure the girls still know how to do
How to
it.
do it?
Yeah.
Well, I think they probably understand it fine. It's just me.
Yeah.
No, they seem to.
What's that?
They understand that part of it. I understand the part where it's from.
Okay.
But you come on by anytime.
Okay. I will.